Good morning on this Sunday, April 28th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Pro-Palestinian protesters clash with police on the campus of Emory University. Also expect several empty podiums as almost all incumbents say no to the Atlanta Press Club debates. And if you're voting by absentee ballot in the May primary, officials are warning you to plan early because of ongoing problems with the Postal Service. Kathy, Phil, and Theron are all here. Brian Robinson is filling in for Martha. Welcome back. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
The protests we saw play out on college campuses across the country made their way here to Metro Atlanta. Police made several arrests on the campus of Emory University as pro-Palestinian protesters set up camp on the lawn. Tensions were high on the campus of Emory University this week as pro-Palestinian protesters and those against the Atlanta Police Training Facility went head-to-head with law enforcement. Emory University police called in Atlanta police and the Georgia State Patrol to try to disperse the crowd. Tasers were used.
Look how they treat working people in this city.
And several were hauled away in restraints.
I was just walking, so I don't know why.
You're hurting me! Out! Let go! Free Palestine! Free Atlanta!
Emory University, we're better than this. We're better than this.
I'm faculty. I'm president-elect at the University of Senate.
You say your name?
Noelle McAfee.
According to Emory University's website, she is with the philosophy department, and she wasn't the only staff member detained.
I'm just here to support the students and a peaceful protest.
A spokesperson released this statement before things escalated, saying, quote, "These individuals are not members of our community. They are activists attempting to disrupt our university as our students finish classes and prepare for finals." Now, Emory does not tolerate vandalism or other criminal activity on campus. Phil, to you first this week and your reaction to what you saw there.
Well, it's a sad day in this country when you see, these are not spontaneous riots around the country and in Georgia. These are very highly organized. When I was at Georgia in the 1970s, you saw the organization. You see campus speakers shouted down, you know, all in the last few decades. You've seen, especially after the George Floyd incidents of 2020, a breakdown of law and order where people are not being punished for serious crimes. And so you see permissiveness. I'm glad that Emory University cracked down when you tell students or non-students to leave. You just cannot occupy areas of a university especially, but anywhere, you have to crack down. I'm proud of the governor. I'm actually proud of Mayor Dickens, who are not going to tolerate a lot of this destruction and disruption.
Kathy, your thoughts on this? I mean, obviously we are all for the First Amendment and your right to free speech, but you know, there are ways to protest. I think Georgia has always set the stage for that. Just your thoughts on what went on.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been wondering over recent weeks and months when we might have a sort of a movement for peace around the world, not just in Israel and Gaza, but you know, I think people have a right to protest. I think when people want to do civil disobedience, they need to be trained in how to do civil disobedience. If you go to get arrested or you trespass, you're going to get arrested, but you don't fight the police. You go and you have your day in court and you make your statement. And that's where I'm concerned, is that people are kind of losing the training of civil disobedience. And I think in Atlanta we have something very unique to contribute to that. And I hope that as people come together to make themselves heard, rightfully so, on this issue, that we start to set the standard of what that looks like.
Well, protests are now bubbling up at Morehouse College after the White House announced President Joe Biden will deliver the keynote address at the school's graduation in May. Some members of the faculty say they oppose the choice. They are protesting the Biden administration's support for Israel and its war against Hamas. They call the conflict genocidal.
Well, let me really quickly comment on what happened at Emory, and I agree with Kathy. Look, I'm a huge proponent of nonviolent protests. I worked for Congressman John Lewis, who knew when he marched across the Edmonds Parish Bridge, along with Hosea Williams, there was an unlawful, unpermitted march that led to people being beat. But to your point about civil disobedience, they did not fight back on the police, and that changed the trajectory of voting in this country forever. What I would say is what Emory and Morehouse needs to do, so I'm getting to Morehouse now, is that these protests are not going to stop. And you're going to have people who are truly intending to do it peacefully, and then you're going to have people that are going to hijack it and going to push back on the police. So here's my advice to Morehouse, Emory, every institution in the state of Georgia. You better designate a zone on your campus that will allow you to go through the process, file for a permit, and to protest, right? Give the protest opportunity to set a place on the campus, because it's going to happen. And if they choose not to do that, then that gives you the opportunity to say, look, we want them to come on the campus as long as they are civil, nonviolent, and give them an opportunity to express their First Amendment right. So now go to Morehouse. Look, I was that Clark Atlanta University student that wouldn't have went probably this far to say, hey, a sitting president should not come to our campus. And that's not really what they said. What they're saying is that there's so many important issues that are going on in this country that they want the president to use this opportunity to address those issues: inequality, racism, voting, health care, you name it, social injustice. And what these Morehouse students, particularly led by their SGA president, what they're saying is that, look, if you're going to come to the campus, we don't want to be used, quote unquote, as a political pawn. And so I think that while this kind of got a little sort of convoluted with a lot of different things, the SGA president's name is Mekhi Perrin, but he said, I want to quote him, Laura, he said, our expectations for the Biden administration is that the same as any in the near future, that they were acutely aware of the society that is being overwhelmed with inequality and discrimination. So the media jumps out and says Morehouse College rejects President Biden from coming to the campus. Well, some people did say that. But I think that he's got to be prepared to address this crisis that's going on in Gaza. While, I think the president is right where a lot of people want him to be. He's for Israel to defend themselves, but we got to figure out a peaceful way to kind of move forward. And so I just think that they've had some meetings, the faculty and staff have talked, and I commend these students as long as they continue to be nonviolent.
Well, Brian, there were several students that Fox 5 interviewed and said that they do support the president's visit. We saw Senator Raphael Warnock say that he's proud to have his president come to his alma mater.
Sure. And look, there's going to be a lot of people in that audience who are going to vote for Joe Biden, and there's going to be a handful that are going to do some sort of protest. What I would encourage Morehouse to do there, and this isn't, I don't care whether you're a Republican or Democrat, I believe you respect the office of the President of the United States. And if a president comes to your commencement address, that is an honor for your institution, and it should be treated that way by the people in the audience, whether that's Donald Trump, whether that's Joe Biden, anybody else. And so what needs to be done on the front end is say, if you're going to protest, do something quiet. Stand up, maybe turn your back to the president. But here's the other thing. Here's the political side of it. Joe Biden is running a little bit of a risk. This could be a bad scene. This could be really bad optics for him. He really needs for Gen Z to show up for him. And the black Gen Z voters are a huge part of his coalition if he's going to get to victory in Georgia. And if this visual is showing a huge divide amongst that base, his chances of winning in Georgia go down precipitously if that group of folks is not solidly behind him.
I want to move on. The AJC's Greg Bluestein reports that the wife of the top lawyer for the Democratic Party of Georgia told the party chairwoman to take a flight on a plane with a history of safety issues, and also called U.S. Representative Nikema Williams something that we just cannot say on the air. Serene Varghese posted the insults on social media after Congresswoman Williams voted in favor of aid to Israel over the weekend. Theron, this is an example of kind of the tensions that we're seeing displayed all over the country and now here in Georgia.
Well, we got to, look, this is not a partisan issue, all right? I mean, the Jewish friends that I've talked to, and I've spent a lot of time talking to them, they believe that a peaceful solution for them to be able to protect themselves and to be able to focus on Hamas is a nonpartisan issue. Democrats and Republicans should be coming together to do that. But this vote, which Democrats have been calling for a very long time, and finally the speaker stepped up and said, hey, up or down, you're going to vote this out. It was going to be met with controversy. And so I don't necessarily want to take a position on what should have been said and not said. Apparently it was a lot that was said on Twitter.
Well, there were a lot of Democrats that denounced what she said.
And a lot of Democrats denounced what she said.
And how she said it. I mean, threatening somebody and...
Yeah, I mean, that I denounce the threats. Mm-hmm. But what I'm not going to do is silence a woman who is Palestinian, who, from what I hear, is very emotional about this whole issue. And I don't think that's my place to denounce. But if you go off as a member of Congress and say certain things that she said, yeah, I denounce that. But ultimately, look, we're the Democratic Party. We got to be able to have these conversations civilly.
Phil.
Well, we can all say, and we should, that we need to be civil, and when we disagree, and that's fine. But this woman is a disgrace. Actually calling for wishing somebody dead, that's way beyond the line. And she's not apologizing, which is even more disgraceful. I'm glad the Democrats, a lot of Democrats are rightfully condemning it. Everybody should rightfully condemn talk like this. There's going to be haters on either side of the political spectrum. That's just a given. But I do think with all of these demonstrations and violence that you see, we need to crack down. I'm glad the governor said recently that there'll be no big mass demonstrations blocking highways. There shouldn't be property occupied. They're already there in zones in every 26 of our universities in the university system where you can speak peacefully. So I don't like outsiders, though, coming into the campus. I think that's a bad idea. But I think we need to start being ready for more demonstrations like this.
All right. Up next, so far, just about every incumbent running in the May 21st primary has declined an invitation to the Atlanta Press Club debates. We'll discuss all those empty podiums next.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Perhaps a sign of the times, most incumbent candidates in Georgia have declined an invitation to discuss issues with their opponents at the Atlanta Press Club debates for the May primary. Bryden, are debates becoming irrelevant?
Well, one thing that's changed dramatically in recent years is that candidates more than ever before are able to speak directly to voters through social media. So the debates actually pose a problem for incumbents in several ways. One, it puts a platform to your challenger who probably can't pay to buy their own platform. And two, if it is a big, busy campaign, let me tell you, as a communicator who's worked on campaigns, I have been in debate prep more times than I care to remember, and it sucks up so much time on a campaign when your candidate's no longer raising money, no longer doing political debates, because you're so scared of one 10-second soundbite that can derail the entire train. And so it's just a huge time suck for campaigns, and it is a danger for incumbents. Take Lucy McBath. She has no danger in this primary. She is going to win by a massive margin. There's no need to take the risk and do a debate. I don't disagree. I'm no offense to Maria Zapata and the Atlanta Press Club. They do a great job. They put a lot of time and effort into doing it. It is a public service. But I also understand where the campaigns are coming from.
Well, I think they have to change up the format too, but that's where I disagree
well,
with you.
They need some more conservative-leaning journalists up there, for one thing. That was, as a Republican, I can tell you, I always felt ganged up on in those debates.
Well, that is true. Poor boy.
Kathy,
Totally
well,
true.
listen,
Kathy, you ran for office.
I did
so-
a bunch of times, and I was in those press club debates, and I think they're incredibly important. You get a televised audience in Atlanta with the traffic we have. People don't want to go out to go to a campaign event. So the fact that you can sit and watch on TV a debate, my advice to anybody is if somebody that you're voting for isn't showing up for a debate, don't vote for them. Pick somebody else. Pick somebody who's willing to take the time to come out and talk about what they're doing. And if an incumbent can't explain themselves, how they voted or something that they did without fear of messing up, then they probably shouldn't be in that office.
Well, Phil, we all remember the empty podium when former Senator David Perdue declined his invitation and allowed then candidate John Ossoff the full stage.
Right. I like debates. And yes, sorry, Brian, but you get paid to do the prep. So anyhow.
I was like,
But I like debates. That people ought to hear the policy issues. I do agree with Brian that the media is a problem, because if you get stacked against conservatives or Republicans, which the press club has done in the past, they need to fix that.
Darren.
Look, real quick, I come down on both sides of this issue. I remember in 2008, Maria Supporter talked about me like a dog all around town because I refused to let Congressman John Lewis debate. And the reason is because I just felt like, you know what, the other two candidates had not proven themselves to debate. And then Congressman Lewis, I wasn't worried about him doing well. I thought he would have killed it. But then I also sympathize with these candidates who need that audience, to Kathy's point. If you're an incumbent, you should debate at least once. Now, to just say I'm not going to debate at all, I disagree with that. But I do think that the press club is trying. They do need to change up the format. We've told them that directly. So I've told y'all they'll need to change the format. You need to get more people to view it. But I do think that it's really, I sympathize with these first-time candidates who deserve that one shot on a televised debate to just tell people why you're running. And in the comments, be disciplined, do it, and just, I agree with Brian. I mean, you can say something that will totally change the trajectory of your campaign, but to just not show show up to any debate, I kind of disagree with that.
Well, maybe they'll change their tune in November.
And I don't change what I said. I stand by what I said. I've lived it. But I will say in the Purdue Ossoff debate, that one did matter. And that did hurt David Perdue. So what I'm saying is, strategize. Is this going to hurt me if I don't show up? It did hurt David Perdue. He looked weak coming out of that.
And I predicted that.
And Ossoff really seized the moment.
I predicted that he was going to lose partly because of that, but also remember Kelly Loeffler went on, and I think that she did not do herself a great service in that debate because
repeating
that. Now she had some other good debates. To be fair to her, she had some good debates, but that debate, did not put Raphael Warnock on the defense like I think she thought it was. I think it was, it was not good for her. So, it goes both ways.
And it helped Herschel Walker against.
Well, that's what I was saying.
Against Warnock.
So Herschel
he
Walker,
looked strong.
Yeah.
He overcame the bar he had to get over there.
He did.
All right, let's move on.
It was a low bar. Because
Governor Kemp signed a bill into law aimed at the state's crackdown on human trafficking. It will require medical offices and massage therapists to post trafficking notices in their offices. It also allows regulators to inspect massage therapy businesses without notice. Now, this is the 9th piece of legislation Governor Kemp has signed into law dealing with human trafficking. And Kathy, we know this is a very important issue to First Lady Marty Kemp.
Well, it is, and it's an important issue, and it's great to see her taking on, sort of a body of work and moving it forward as public policy, and this is a good one. I think it's bipartisan, and I think everybody should care about it.
Brian, lots of bipartisanship on this one.
Absolutely. What we're seeing is, as we evolve, these new pieces of legislation are addressing the nuances in this. When we think of human trafficking, child trafficking particularly, we envision a 12-year-old chained to a radiator in a basement, and that's not what this is. It can be hard for a lot of people to see this as trafficking. And so what this is doing is putting the tools in the law for prosecutors like Attorney General Chris Carr's Human Trafficking Task Force to go to court and put the people who are behind this in prison. And I will say every person that Chris Carr's office has prosecuted has been convicted. It's an amazing record.
Phil.
Well, those are good points that you're making, Brian, and I think one of the laws which I thought was badly needed and did get through is these scumbags that groom these young children, and that's now a felony, and so that's, to your point, that gives more tools to the prosecutors.
Yes. Up next, officials are warning voters problems in Metro Atlanta's mail service could delay your absentee ballots.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Now, some county elections officials are urging voters to request their absentee ballots as soon as possible. Delays could happen due to the ongoing problems at the U.S. Postal Service we discussed on this show last week. Kathy, you are back at the helm. You're again the chairwoman of the Fulton County Board of Elections. We want to disclose that. But, what is the message for voters here?
Well, the message is this. If you want to vote absentee, request it right now. But if you don't, and you just want to avoid lines or something on election day, early voting starts on Monday, tomorrow. And so get out and vote, do your early voting. But if you do request a ballot and you think there's a delay, go to My Voter page at the Secretary of State's website and check and see what the status is, because once it goes out, you'll know it's gone out and you can see if there's been a holdup at the post office. But you've got to be kind of an activist because, frankly, the General Assembly hasn't given us much time to put things out there. They don't give us much time to count them. So you've got to have a plan. When they say make a plan to vote, make a plan to vote and carry it out.
Phil, what's the plan?
Well, the plan is, and you're referencing the May 21st primary, which is both parties and nonpartisan races, including judges. I think you're giving some good tips there. Check out the Secretary of State's webpage. I'm a big believer now, especially to Republicans, get out there and early vote, because traditionally the Democrats have piled up that margin of early voting, and both sides can see who's at it right when election day approaches, and so Republicans need to step it up so the Democrats can't figure out that margin.
All right, we'll move on. A new ordinance is now in effect in the city of Savannah that affects gun owners. If you leave your weapon in your vehicle, you need to lock it up. If it's stolen, you have 24 hours to report it to police. The maximum fine for violations, $1,000 fine and up to 30 days in jail. Brian.
I think one thing that comes with rights is responsibilities. And, we are fierce defenders of the Second Amendment here in Georgia, just as we're fierce defenders of the First Amendment, just not violent protests. And I'm okay with localities having practical, common sense restrictions on folks, saying you got to be responsible with a deadly weapon. You have every right to have that in your car. You have every right to defend yourself against potential criminals and dangers to your family. But you got to make sure that you're protecting other people's families. And so I'm okay with this. I mean, we have to be very careful when it comes to Second Amendment rights. It's a very sensitive topic, but I think making sure that you're not giving access to guns to criminals is a fairly decent public policy win.
Sounds like common sense. Theron?
This is exactly a shout out to Mayor Van Johnson in Savannah. I actually saw him this week in Atlanta, and this is leadership. I mean, we talked about him last week with Tybee Island. And by the way, Orange Crush went through with and there was a little twerking going on.
We did have some arrests that came out later in the week.
One of the things
it was relatively calm.
Yeah, but the twerking was happening. But also, it was a public beach that had, I think, an excessive amount of public enforcement. But shout out to the people who went to Orange Crush and did it right. But no, look, what the mayor's saying is this, as Brian said, you can have the right to have the gun. He's not against Second Amendment. It comes with responsibility. And I think that, look, we know from all the chiefs who we talk to, law enforcement will tell you that the number one reason that people have access to illegal guns is that they steal them out of people's homes and their cars. And so now putting the onus back on the people who have a gun in their car, if you don't report it, putting some restrictions on it, I think it's the right thing. And you're going to see other cities, I guarantee you, do this pretty soon.
All right. Speaking of responsibility, here's another story I wanted to touch on. When you're craving some spicy wings, it may seem like an emergency, but it wouldn't be something you'd call 911 for. And that's exactly what one Atlanta woman would disagree with us for, because Atlanta police say she rang up the emergency line to do just that. And now, we all think that that's funny, but think about this. Out of the 1.3 million calls handled by Atlanta's 911 center last year, only 45,000 were deemed serious emergencies, and only 900 of those were shootings or stabbings. So if it's not an emergency, folks, please call 311. Phil?
Yeah, hang up on these idiots and don't listen for a minute to hear about the wings. Just move on to something else.
I mean, Kathy, this is a serious issue.
It's a serious issue, and I think people, I don't know what people are thinking when they do stuff like that. There's an awful lot of pot smoking going on in Atlanta. Maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. But, we need to preserve emergency calls for emergencies.
I mean, Brian, we talked about the delays in the 911 system, and this attributes to those delays.
Well, how many of us have heard from friends and colleagues, I called 911 and I was put on hold?
Yes.
I mean, this is a real thing where someone is dealing with an immediate danger. So these people, they're not just pranksters. They're not just idiots. They are a threat to public safety, and they must be dealt with that way.
Theron.
So we talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? So don't call 911 to ask for chicken wings. And also, I remember I used the Eclipse example, and that did happen, by the way. People would say, "Oh, is the Eclipse going to do something?" And so I'm going to flip it to the other side, and let's sympathize with the workers and the city leaders, because they are there answering these calls, and they can't hang up on them. I mean, they can't do that, because that's the whole story.
Put them on hold then.
But the hold times are too long. But shout out to these local county and city leaders that are trying to have more staffing, more technology to basically try to streamline some of these calls.
They are our winners, and we will have more winners and losers coming up.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
I want to first start off with 13-year-old Jagger Cott, who lost his fight with mitochondrial disease. He and his family were part of the inspiration to pass Georgia's medical marijuana law. And our hearts and prayers go out to Jagger's parents, family, and friends. Jagger, he was a true fighter. All right, Brian.
My winner is the inductees to the Fellowship of Grady College, my alma mater. I promised I would do this because I missed the board meeting on Friday. The Rick Dunn, Cynthia Grobar, Ed Grismore, Mark Slaybaugh, a very well-known sports reporter nationally, and Guy Waldron. And my loser is the Georgia Senate Democratic Caucus, who put out a statement saying that what was happening at Emory was a long-held American tradition of protest. No, it was violence. They were attacking police officers. They were invading private property. They were engaging in graffiti in the past as well. That is not protected speech.
Theron.
I think I'm right on this, Kathy. Early voting will start next week, right? So tomorrow, Monday, as we tape on Friday, I encourage people to go out and take advantage of early voting. Also want to make the airport, U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was in town with the widening of Concourse D, and also celebrating the airport as the world's busiest and most innovative airport. And then lastly, Tom Perez was in town celebrating Hillendale Hospital in DeKalb County with the infrastructure money they used, and also the Atlanta Beltline that has received a lot of money from the administration as well.
Phil.
My winner is Emory University and its president for cracking down hard. You cannot tolerate what was turning into violence. You don't attack law enforcement officers. When you're told to move out, you move out. And also, I rarely make the New York Times, that liberal organ, a winner, but they actually chastised President Clinton. I almost spilled my coffee when I read it that morning for not being accessible to the media. He holds very few press conferences. Of course, he's increasingly senile. I understand why they're doing that.
Do you mean Biden? You said Clinton.
Biden, but yes.
You said Clinton. Speaking of, I won't go there.
I'm not increasingly senile.
You're having a moment.
It was a Biden moment.
All right, I have one winner. The Georgia Department of Community Affairs. They have a new housing assistance program called Georgia Dream Peach Plus, or Peach Dream Plus, I don't know. But it extends both the income limits and how much they're able to give in terms of down payment assistance.
We'll leave it
People
there.
should check it out.
Thanks, folks.